The Ancient Wisdom by Annie Besant. Chapter 12, Building a Kosmos. It is not possible, at our present stage of evolution, to do more than roughly indicate a few points in the vast outline of the cosmic scheme in which our globe plays its little part. By a cosmos is here meant a system which seems from our standpoint to be complete in itself, arising from a single logos, and sustained by his life. Such a system is our solar system, and the physical sun may be considered to be the lowest manifestation of the logos when acting as the center of his cosmos. Every form is indeed one of his concrete manifestations, but the sun is his lowest manifestation as the life-giving, invigorating, all-pervading, all-controlling, regulative, coordinating central power. Says an occult commentary. Surya, S-U-R-Y-A, with a circumflex over the U, in brackets, the sun, is its visible reflection. In its visible reflection, exhibits the first or lowest state of the seventh, the highest state of the universal presence, the pure of the pure, the first manifested breath of the ever unmanifested Sat, S-A-T, Beeness, B-E-N-E-S-S. All the central physical or objective suns are in the substance of the lowest state of the first principle of the breath. And that is a quote from The Secret Doctrine, page 309. All physical forces and energies are but transmutations of the life poured forth by the Sun, the Lord and Giver to the system. Hence, in many ancient religions, the Sun has stood as the symbol of the Supreme God, the symbol, in truth, the least liable to misconstruction by the ignorant. Mr. Sinnett well says, and here's a quote from him, "The solar system is indeed an area of nature including more than any other, but the very highest beings, whom our humanity is capable of developing, are in a position to investigate. Theoretically, we may feel sure as we look up into the heavens at night that the whole solar system itself is but a drop in the ocean of the cosmos, but that drop is, in its turn, an ocean from the point of view of the consciousness of such half-developed beings within it as ourselves, and we can only hope at present to acquire vague and shadowy conceptions of its origin and constitution. Shadowy, however, though these may be, they enable us to assign the subordinate planetary series in which our own evolution is carried on to its proper place in the system of which it is a part, or at all events to get a broad idea of the relative magnitude of the whole system of our planetary chain, of the world in which we are at present functioning, and of the respective periods of evolution in which human beings are interested." End quote. For in truth, we cannot grasp our own position intellectually without some idea, however vague it may be, of our relation to the whole. And while some students are content to work within their own sphere of duty and to leave the wider reaches of life until they are called to function in them, others feel the need of a far-reaching scheme in which they have their place, and take an intellectual delight in soaring upward to attain a bird's-eye view of the whole field of evolution. This need has been recognized and met by the spiritual guardians of humanity in the magnificent delineation of the cosmos from the standpoint of the occultist, traced by their pupil and messenger H.P. Blavatsky in The Secret Doctrine, a work that will become ever more and more enlightening as students of the ancient wisdom themselves, explore and master the lower levels of our evolving world. The appearance of the Logos, we are told, is the herald of the birth hour of our cosmos. And then there's a quote here. When he is manifest, all is manifested after him. By his manifestation, this all becomes manifest. And this is a quote from Mundakopanishad. With himself he brings the fruits of a past cosmos, the mighty spiritual intelligences who are to be his co-workers and agents in the universe now to be built. Highest of these are the seven, in quotes, the seven, often themselves spoken of a logoi, Logoi, since each in his place is the center of a distinct department in the cosmos, as the Logos is the center of the whole. The commentary before quoted says, open quote, the seven beings in the sun are the seven holy ones, seven self-born from the inherent power in the matrix of the mother substance. The energy from which they sprang into conscious existence in every sun is what some people call Vishnu, which is the breath of the absoluteness. We call it the one manifested life, itself a reflection of the absolute. End quote. This one manifested life is the Logos, the manifested God. From this primary division, our cosmos takes its sevenfold character, and all subsequent divisions in their descending order reproduce the seven-keyed scale. Under each of the seven secondary logoi come the descending hierarchies of intelligences that form the governing body of his kingdom. Among these we hear of the Lepika, who are the recorders of the karma of that kingdom and all the entities therein, of the Maharajas or Deva Rajas, who superintend the working out of the karmic law, and of the vast hosts of the builders, who shape and fashion all forms after the ideas that dwell in the treasure house of the Logos in the universal mind, that pass from him to the seven, each of whom plans out his own realm under the supreme direction and all-inspiring life, giving it, at the same time, his own individual coloring. H.P. Blavatsky calls these seven realms that make up the solar system the seven Laya, L-A-Y-A, centers. And she says, open quote, the seven Laya centers are the 7 0 points, using the term zero in the same sense that chemists do, to indicate a point at which in esotericism the scale of reckoning of differentiation begins. From the centers beyond which esoteric philosophy allows us to perceive the dim metaphysical outlines of the seven sons of life and light, and seven logos of the Hermetic and all the other philosophies, begins the differentiation of the elements which enter into the constitution of our solar system. End quote. And that's a quote from The Secret Doctrine. This realm is a planetary evolution of a stupendous character, the field in which are lived out the stages of a life, of which a physical planet such as Venus is but a transient embodiment. We may speak of the evolver and the ruler of this realm as a planetary logos, so as to avoid confusion. He draws from the matter of the solar system, outpoured from the central logos himself, the crude materials he requires, and elaborates them by his own life energies, each planetary logos thus specializing the matter of his realm from a common stock. The atomic state in each of these 7 planes of his kingdom being identical with the matter of a subplane of the whole solar system. Continuity is thus established throughout the whole. As H.P. Blavatsky remarks, atoms change their combining equivalents on every planet, the atoms themselves being identical, but their combinations differing. And then she goes on to say, open quote, not alone the elements of our planet, but even those of its sisters in the solar system, differ as widely from each other in their combinations as from the cosmic elements beyond our solar limit. Each atom has 7 planes of being, or existence, we are taught. End quote. The subplanes, as we've been calling them, of each great plane. On the lower planes of his evolving realm, the planetary logos establishes 7 globes or worlds, which for convenience sake, following the received nomenclature, we will call globes A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And these are the 7 small wheels revolving, one giving birth to another, spoken of in stanza 6 of the Book of Dzyan, D-Z-Y-A-N. He builds them in the likeness of the older wheels, placing them on the imperishable centers. Imperishable, since each wheel not only gives birth to its successor, but also itself reincarnated at the same center, as we shall see. These globes may be figured as disposed in 3 pairs on the arc of an ellipse, with the middle globe at the midmost and lowest point. For the most part, globes A and G, the first and 7th, are on the arupa levels of the mental plane. Globes B and F, the 2nd and 6th, are on the rupa levels. Globes C and E, the 3rd and 5th, are on the astral plane. Globe D, the 4th, is on the physical plane. These globes are spoken of by H.P. Blavatsky as graduated on the 4 lower planes of the world formation, i.e., the physical and astral planes and the 2 subdivisions of the mental, rupa and arupa. They may be figured. This is a typical arrangement, but it is modified at certain stages of evolution. These 7 globes form a planetary ring or chain, and if for a moment we regard the planetary chain as a whole, as, so to say, an entity, a planetary life or individual, that chain passes through 7 distinct stages of its evolution. The 7 globes as a whole form its planetary body, and this planetary body disintegrates and is reformed 7 times during the planetary life. The planetary chain has 7 incarnations, and the results obtained in one are handed on to the next. As there are 7 planetary loci, it will be seen that 7 of these planetary evolutions, each distinct from the other, make up the solar system. In an occult commentary, this coming forth of the 7 loci from the one, and of each of the 7 successive chains of the 7 globes, each is described. From 1 light, 7 lights, from each of the 7, 7 times 7. Taking up the incarnations of the chain, the Manvantaras, we learn that these are subdivisible into 7 stages. A wave of life from the planetary logos is sent around the chain, and 7 of these great life waves, each one technically spoken of as a round, complete a single Manvantara. Each globe has thus 7 periods of activity during a Manvantara, each in turn becoming the field of evolving life. Looking at a single globe, we find that during the period of its activity, 7 root races of humanity evolve on it, together with 6 other non-human kingdoms interdependent on each other. As these 7 kingdoms contain forms of all stages of evolution, as all have higher reaches stretching before them, the evolving forms of one globe pass to another to carry on their growth when the period of activity of the former globe comes to an end, and go on from globe to the end of that round. They further pursue their course round after round to the close of the 7 rounds or manvantaras. They once again climb onward through the manvantara after manvantara till the end of the reincarnations of their planetary chain is reached, when the results of that planetary evolution are gathered up by the planetary logos. Needless to say that scarcely anything of this evolution is known to us. Only the salient points of this stupendous whole have been indicated by the teachers. Even when we come to the planetary evolution, in which our own world is a stage, we know nothing of the process through which its 7 globes evolved during its first 2 manvantaras, and its 3rd manvantara. We only know that the globe, which is now our moon, was globe D of that planetary chain. This fact, however, may help us to realize more clearly what is meant by these successive reincarnations of a planetary chain. The 7 globes which form the lunar chain passed in due course through their 7-fold evolution. 7 times the life wave, the breath of the planetary logos, swept round the chain, quickening in turn each globe into life. It is as though the logos, in guiding his kingdom, turned his attention first to globe A, and thereon brought into successive existence the innumerable forms that in their totality make up a world. When evolution has been carried to a certain point, he turned his attention to globe B, and globe A slowly sank into a peaceful sleep. Thus, the life wave was carried from globe to globe until one round of the circle was completed by globe G, finishing its evolution. Then there succeeded a period of rest, during which the external evolutionary activity ceased. At the close of this period, external evolution recommenced. Starting on its 7th round, beginning as before on globe A, the process is repeated 6 times, but when the 7th, the last round, is reached, there is a change. Globe A, having accomplished its 7th life period, gradually disintegrates, and the imperishable Laya, Laya, center state supervenes. From that, at the dawn of the succeeding manvantara, a new globe A is evolved, like a new body, in which the principles of the preceding planet A take up their abode. This phase is only intended to convey the idea of a relation between globe A of the first manvantara and globe A of the second. The nature of that connection remains hidden. Of the connection between globe D of the lunar manvantara, our moon, and globe D of the terrene manvantara, our earth, we know little more, and Mr. Sinnett has given a convenient summary of the slender knowledge we possess in The System to Which We Belong. It's a book that he's written, The System to Which We Belong. And he says, quote, "The New Earth Nebula was developed round a center bearing pretty much the same relation to the dying planet that the centers of the Earth and Moon bear to one another at present. But in the nebulous condition, this aggregation of matter occupied an enormously greater volume than the solid matter of the Earth now occupies. It stretched out in all directions so as to include the old planet in its fiery embrace. The temperature of the new nebula appeared to be considerably higher than any temperatures we are acquainted with, and by this means the old planet was superficially heated afresh in such a manner that all atmosphere, water, and volatilizable matter upon it was brought into the gaseous condition, and so became amenable to the new center of attraction set up at the center of the new nebula. In this way, the air and seas of the old planet were drawn over the constitution of the new one, and thus it is that the moon, in its present state, is an arid, glaring mass, dry and cloudless, no longer habitable, and no longer required for the habitation of any physical beings. When the present Manvantara is nearly over during the 7th round, its disintegration will be completed, and the matter which still holds together will resolve into meteoric dust. End quote. In the 3rd volume of The Secret Doctrine, in which are printed some of the oral teachings given by H.P. Blavatsky to her more advanced pupils, it is stated, open quote, "In the beginning of the evolution of our globe, the moon was much nearer to the earth and larger than it is now. It has retreated from us and shrunk much in size. The moon gave all her principles to the earth. The new moon will appear during the 7th round, and our moon will finally disintegrate and disappear." End quote. Evolution during the lunar Manvantara produced 7 classes of being, technically called fathers or Pitris, Pitris, since it was they who generated the beings of the terrene Mantavara. These are the lunar Pitris of the Secret Doctrine. More developed than these were 2 other classes, variously called solar Pitris, men, lower Dhyania, Dhyanis. Too far advanced to enter on the terrene evolution in its early stages, but requiring the aid of later physical conditions for their future growth. The higher of these 2 classes consisted in individualized animal-like creatures with embryonic souls, i.e., they had developed the causal body. The second were approaching its formation. Lunar Pitris, the first class, were at the beginning of that approach, showing mentality, while the second and third had only developed the kamic principle, K-A-M-I-C, with a circumflex over the A. These 7 classes of lunar Pitris were the product of the lunar chain handed on for further development to the terrene, the 4th reincarnation of the planetary chain. As monads with the mental principle present in the first, the kamic principle developed in the 2nd and 3rd classes. This germinal in the 4th, only approaching the germ stage, is still less developed 5th, and imperceptible in the 6th and 7th. These entities entered the earth chain to ensoul the elemental essence and the forms shaped by the builders. The nomenclature adopted by me is that of the Secret Doctrine, the valuable paper by Mrs. Sinnett and Mr. Scott Elliott on the lunar Pitris. And Madame Blavatsky's lower Dhyanis, Dhyanis, that incarnate in the 3rd and 4th rounds and are taken as the 1st and 2nd classes of the lunar Pitris. In their 3rd class is therefore Madame Blavatsky's 1st class, their 4th class her 2nd, and so on. There is no difference in the statement of facts, only in the nomenclature. But this difference of nomenclature may mislead the student if it is not explained. As I am using Madame Blavatsky's nomenclature, my fellow students of the London Lodge and the readers of their transaction will need to remember that my 1st is their 3rd, and so sequentially. The Builders is a name, the Builders in quotes, is a name including innumerable intelligences, hierarchies of beings, of graduated consciousness and power, who on each plane carry out the actual building of forms. The higher direct and control, while the lower fashion the materials after the models provided. And now appears the use of the successive globes of the planetary chain. Globe A is the archetypal world on which are built the models of the forms that are to be elaborated during the round. From the mind of the planetary logos, the highest builders take the archetypal ideas and guide the builders of the Arupa levels as they fashion the archetypal forms for the round. On globe B, these forms are reproduced in various shapes in mental matter by the lower rank of builders and are evolved slowly along different lines until they are ready to receive an infiltration of denser matter. Then, the builders in astral matter take up the task, and on globe C, fashion astral forms with details more worked out. When the forms have been evolved as far as the astral conditions permit, the builders of globe D take up the task of form shaping on the physical plane, and the lowest kinds of matter are thus fashioned into appropriate types, and the forms reach their densest and most complete condition. From this middle point onward, the nature of the evolution somewhat changes. Hitherto, the greatest attention has been directed to the building of the form. On the ascending arc, the chief attention is directed to using the form as a vehicle of the evolving life, and on the second half of the evolution, on globe D and on globes E and F, the consciousness expresses itself first on the physical and then on the astral and lower mental planes through the equivalence of the forms elaborated on the descending arc. On the descending arc, the monad impresses itself as best it may on the evolving forms, and these impressions appear vaguely as impressions, intuitions, and so on. On the ascending arc, the monad expresses itself through the forms of their inner ruler. On globe G, the perfection of the round is reached, the monad inhabiting and using its vehicles, the archetypal forms of globe A. During all these stages, the lunar pitras have acted as the souls of the forms, brooding over them, later inhabiting them. It is on the first-class pitras that the heaviest burden of the work falls during the first 3 rounds. The second and third-class pitras flow into the forms worked up by the first. The first prepare these forms by ensouling them for a time and then pass on, leaving them for the tendency of the second and third classes. By the end of the first round, the archetypical forms of the mineral world have been brought down to be elaborated through the successive rounds until they reach their densest state in the middle of the 4th round. Fire is the element of the first round. In the second round, the first principal pitras continue their human evolution, only touching the lower stages of the human fetus. Still touches them. No, let me start that sentence over again. In the second round, the first-class pitras continue their human evolution, only touching the lower stages, as the human fetus still touches them today, while the second class at the close of the round have reached the incipient human stage. The great work of the round is bringing down the archetypal forms of vegetable life, which will reach their perfection in the 5th round. Air is the second round element. In the 3rd round, the first-class pitras becomes definitely human in form. Though the body is jelly-like and gigantic, it is yet on globe D, compact enough to begin to stand upright. He is ape-like and is covered with hairy bristles. The 3rd-class pitras reach the incipient human stage. Second-class solar pitris make their first appearance on globe D in this round and take the lead in human evolution. The archetypical forms of animals are brought down to be elaborated into perfection by the end of the sixth round, and water is the characteristic element. The fourth round, the middle one of the seven that make up the Turin Manvantara, is distinguished by bringing to globe A the archetypical forms of humanity, this round being as distinctively human as its predecessors were respectively animal, vegetable, and mineral. Not till the seventh round will these forms all be fully realized by humanity, but the possibilities of the human form are manifested in archetypes in the fourth. Earth is the element of this round, the densest, the most material. The first-class solar pitris may be said to hover round globe D more or less in this round during its early stages of activity, but they do not definitely incarnate until after the third great outpouring of life from the planetary logos in the middle of the third race, and then only slowly, the number increasing as the race progresses, and multitudes incarnating in the early fourth race. The evolution of humanity on our Earth globe D offers in a strongly marked form the continual sevenfold diversity already often alluded to. 7 races of men have already shown themselves in the third round, and in the fourth of these fundamental divisions become very clear on globe C, where 7 races, each with sub-races, evolved. On globe D, humanity begins with a first race, usually called a root race, at 7 different points, 7 of them each on his lot. These 7 types, side by side, not successive, make up the first root race, and each again has its own sub-races. From the first root race, jelly-like amorphous creatures, evolves the second root race with forms of more definite consistency, and form it the third ape-like creatures that become clumsy, gigantic men. In the middle of the evolution of this third root race, called the Lemurian, there come to Earth from another planetary chain, that of Venus, much farther advanced in its evolution, members of its highly evolved humanity, glorious beings often spoken of as sons of the fire, from their radiant appearance, a lofty order among the sons of mind. They take up their abode on Earth as the divine teachers of the young humanity, some of them acting as channels for the third outpouring and projecting into animal man the spark of monadic life, which forms the causal body. Thus the first, second, and third classes of lunar pitris become individualized, the vast bulk of humanity. The 2 classes of solar pitris already individualized, the first ere leaving the lunar chain, and the second later, form 2 low orders of the sons of mind. The second incarnate in the third race at its middle point, and the first come in later, for the most part in the fourth race, the Atlantean. The fifth, or the Aryan race, now leading human evolution, has evolved from the 5th subrace of the Atlantean, the most promising families being segregated in Central Asia, and the new race type evolved under the direct superintendence of a great being, technically called a Manu. Emerging from Central Asia, the first subrace settled in India, south of the Himalayas, and in their 4 orders of teachers, warriors, merchants, and workmen, became the dominant race in the vast Indian peninsula, conquering the 4th race and the 3rd race nations, who then inhabited it. By the end of the 7th race of the 7th round, i.e., at the close of our Turin Manvantara, Our chain will hand on to its successors the fruits of its life. These fruits will be perfected divine men, Buddhas, Manus, Chohans, masters, ready to take up the work of guiding evolution under the direction of the planetary logos, with hosts of less evolved entities of every grade of consciousness, who still need physical experience for the perfecting of their divine possibilities. The fifth, sixth, and seventh Manvantaras of our chain are still in the womb of the future after the fourth one has closed, and then the planetary logos will gather up into himself all the fruits of evolution. With his children, enter on the period of rest and bliss. Of that high state we cannot speak. How at this stage of our evolution could we dream of its unimaginable glory? Only we dimly know that our glad spirits shall enter into the joy of the Lord, and resting in him shall see stretching before them boundless ranges of sublime life and love, heights and depths of power and joy, limitless as the one experience, inexhaustible as the one that is. Peace to all beings. And that concludes The Ancient Wisdom by Annie Besant.